Hi guys, today we're going to talk about probability and we're just going to review our vocabulary terms. So if you remember from yesterday, one of the first terms we talked about was the term certain. I'm trying out a new stylus. I think it's a little funky, it makes writing kind of weird. We'll see if it gets any better. So we have certain is our first probability term. Certain means something will definitely happen. Okay? Will definitely happen. Now, what we mean by that is if I have a bag filled with 3 pink squares, and I reach into that bag, it is certain that I'm going to pull out a pink square. Okay? There's no other choice. And we can represent that in several ways. We can say it's certain that we will pull out a pink square. We represent it as a fraction. We have 1, 2, 3 items in the bag. So 3 items in our set. If we think about it like a fraction, that can be our denominator. And of those 3 items, 3 of them are pink squares. So we say 3 out of 3 probability that I will pull out a pink square. 3 out of 3 equals 1 whole. And 1 whole means that it is 100% certain that I will pull out a pink square from this bag. So that's certain. Okay? Our next term is likely. And likely looks like this. Likely means will probably happen. Okay? It doesn't have to happen. It won't definitely happen, but it probably will. So if I've got another bag, and I've got my same 3 pink squares in it, or something close to squares, but I also have a yellow square, it's likely that I will pull out a pink square. The reason for this is that you just have a higher chance of pulling out a pink square, because there are more of them. If we look at them, we've got 1, 2, 3 pink squares, and 1 yellow square. So it's likely that we'll pull out one of these. And we can show that again using a fraction. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 shapes this time. So our denominator is 4. That's 4 shapes in our set. And of those 4 shapes, 1, 2, 3 are pink. So that means that there's a 3 in 4 chance that we'll pull out a pink square. It's likely to happen. Okay. We're going to jump ahead a little bit with using the same problem. The same way, if we take a fraction of our yellow squares, we've still got 4 pieces in our set, and one of them is yellow. We have a 1 in 4 chance of getting a yellow square. And 1 in 4 is less than 3 out of 4. And so we say this is unlikely. Okay? Now, unlikely means it probably won't happen, but it can. But it probably won't. Just because there's only 1 square in there. If you're reaching in blind, chances of you hitting that 1 square are only 1 in 4. Okay? So not great odds. Okay, so that's 3 of our vocab words. We've done certain, likely, and unlikely. Let's move on to one of my favorites. Let's go blue here because it's my favorite. So this one is impossible. I don't mean it's impossible to do. I mean that's the word. Impossible. This means it will never, ever happen. Okay? Let's go back to our pink squares. Gotta love pink squares. They're the best. I've got 3 of them. My odds of drawing a pink square out of a bag with 3 pink squares in it is 3 out of 3. There are 3 pink squares in the bag, and there are 3 things in the bag. So if I pick anything out of that bag, it's going to be a pink square. Now if I ask you, what are my chances of drawing a yellow square out of that same bag? Are there any yellow squares? Nope. So there are still 3 items in the bag, and none of them, 0 of them, are yellow squares. So that tells us that there's a 0 out of 3 chance that we will get a yellow square out of this bag. And so 0 out of 3 just equals 0. So the probability is impossible. 0 chance. Okay? So possible and certain are pretty easy once you think about it and draw some pictures out. So our last one, which is sometimes tricky, is equally likely. Okay? This just means that the chance of doing something is the same. So it's just like it's equally the same. All right, so let's draw a picture of that instead of writing a definition. So let's say I've got 2 yellow circles and 2 pink squares in a bag. And if we break this down into fractions, we know that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 shapes all together. So that's our denominator for any fraction we make for this set. There are 4 shapes altogether. And so if we do, let's draw our pink squares first. We have 4 on our denominator, and we've got 1, 2 of those. So we have a 2/4 chance to get a pink square. Now let's do our yellow circles. Again, our denominator stays 4 because there are 4 items in our set. And if we look, we have 1, 2 of those. We have a 2/4 chance to get a yellow circle. And we look at this, these fractions are equivalent. They are the same. We have the same chance of getting either one. Okay, so that's what equally likely means, that it's equally likely that you'll get a yellow circle or a pink square. All right. Now, let's just talk about one more vocab word. This word is outcome. Now, this can get tricky, especially if we're talking about these in terms of fractions. An outcome is just how many unique choices. Okay? And that word unique means one of a kind. There are no other things like it. So if we have a set of items, like we have a square, a triangle, a circle, another square, and another square. If we look at that, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items in our set. So if we make a fraction out of this, any fraction we make will have a denominator of 5. Okay? We know that. But if I say, what are your possible outcomes, if we're talking about probability, then a lot of people will just count our shapes again and say, oh, there are 5 outcomes. We can get a square, a triangle, a circle, or a square, or a square. The issue there is that word square is not unique. It is not one of a kind. Then the easy way to draw this out is, okay, well, there's a square. Now that's one of my outcomes. All right, there's a triangle. That's another outcome. And then I've got a circle. That's another outcome. And then I've got more squares, but I already have square down here. So I don't need to draw that again to show my outcomes. And so now I can figure out my chances of getting each of these, and I've only got 1, 2, 3 outcomes. So my chances of getting a square, I've got 1 square, 2 square, 3 squares. 3 squares out of 5, our denominator doesn't change. And then our triangle, we have 1 triangle out of 5. And then we've got 1 circle out of 5. And so, if looking at our fractions, it is equally likely to get a triangle or a circle because those fractions are equivalent. And it's likely that we'll get a square because there are more squares in the bag than anything else. And that we can tell that because that fraction is bigger than both of these. 3/5 is bigger than 1/5 or in 1/5. Okay? So, right now, what I want you to do is go into Interactive Achievement on Google Classroom, and I want you to take the short quiz, RRD, Harbert, Probability Vocab. And then when you're done, let me know, and we'll move on from there.